We're excited. I think we talked about it at the end of the year, and it's we went into the off season feeling really good about ourselves with what the young core accomplished and some of our late season additions, and then there's a lot of reason for us to be optimistic heading into this camp. We know that the camp is probably the most important thing is to keep our health. But the energy that these guys possessed the last 2 months was pretty contagious, and I see that continuing throughout camp heading into opening day.
Not much to add. We're excited. When you have a young club that just won 90 games, it's easy to have a lot of optimism about what's ahead, but it's also hard to win 90 games, and a lot of things went our way last year that helped us get there. So I think this group will stay humble. They'll be motivated to come out and to prove last year and certainly the last couple months of the season weren't a fluke, and they're ready to rock. So we're excited.
Kev, how do you balance out, talking about the big picture in terms of what you guys want to accomplish, but at the same time staying in the moment and just taking things day by day?
Well, I be honest and realistic with the players individually and as a team. You can't deny that we're in a division that we saw two teams win 208 games. Pretty special performances on their end, and you can only think that Toronto and Baltimore are going to continue to get better. So the expectations, I think we'll control them from inside. But for being around these young guys that didn't have a ton of experience, they certainly carried themselves really, really well in some pretty high pressure environments at the end of the year, playing in some exciting ballparks and just a lot of tight ball games. So I would expect to learn from that, continue to grow, and put it to use.
To the front office, do you guys expect less movement for the players, less shock compared to last spring in terms of what you're viewing as this team is shaping up?
Yeah, there's no question. Last year the opening part of camp was different than most. Our whole goal here has been to get to the point where we had a core of players that could compete in this division, compete for the postseason, and that we could roll forward with. You look at what happened on the field last year and how it started to take shape as the year went on, and we certainly feel that that's something that is building here. You never tune out completely the possibility of some kind of move, but we're at the point where we want to be competing for the postseason, and so anything we do will be with that in mind.
For each of you, what do you see as the greatest strength of the club going into camp?
Probably our versatility on the pitching side and on the position player side. We've got a lot of guys that can versatility and depth, but we have a lot of guys that can play different roles on our club. They can hit different parts in the lineup, and we showed last year we've got a pretty special pitching staff that can pitch in different parts of the ball game, and we're going to utilize that again.
Yeah, I'd second that, and I think on top of that, the versatility with these guys are really good teammates, and they're willing to do just about anything that's asked of them, and I think that'll allow this whole thing to play out more than it otherwise might.
Yeah, I would, playing up, the depth part of Kevin's answer, I think when you look at this group, there's a lot of really talented guys in this camp, and there's only 25 spots on our club, and that's a really good position to be in. But we know that to get where we want to go at the end of the season, we are going to need way more than 25. And there's a lot of guys with the ability to play a role in this, and we expect a lot from all of them.
Hey, Kev, where does Christian Arroyo fit into the picture? I know he's battled injuries in the past. He says he feels healthier than he has coming into camp here. Where do you think he fits into the mold?
Well, first of all, we're really excited about Christian. Finally, we think he's healthy. He had some fluke injuries last year. They just seemed like every time he got healthy, something else popped up. So we're excited to see him come out in spring training. He's versatile in the fact that he plays short, third, second base. I think more than anything, rather than put expectations or pressure on him, let him go play. Last year for him, it's a tough time when you get traded. You get traded for a cornerstone player in Longo. Probably some added pressures that he put on, but I think there's some comfort now that he can just go play and add to a lot of our infield depth.
In the same sense with Yandy Diaz, I know that there's a lot of expectations on the outside looking at what you guys had to give up in order to get him with Jake Bowers and the money and whatnot. How do you temper those expectations on the outside while also trying to keep Yandy's expectations high?
I don't think he'll have any problem keeping his own expectations high. You know, he wants to be a really good player and wants the opportunity to play in the big leagues and have that lane, and I think that's something that we're gonna provide for him here. So, you know, it's a fresh environment for him. It's a fresh start. It's as I just said, more of an open lane for an opportunity to be part of the major league club, and with that can be really liberating to the players. So, you know, our goal is to give him an opportunity to come here, get to know him, and let him be himself. And we think the talent that he has will shine in a way that'll make this whole thing go and help us win games.
Charlie Morton comes in with a great reputation. I mean, preceding him as, you know, not just a good pitcher but a great guy. How much can that help, I guess, from the clubhouse standpoint, Kevin, and you know, overall maybe with the young team for you guys?
Hopefully a lot. I mean, the last thing we want to do is put any added pressure on Charlie. But what we've got to know of him, pretty special guy. What we've heard from former teammates and coaches, the way he carries himself, his perspective. I think Charlie's going to be so valuable just with his baseball life experience. He's dealt with injuries. He's dealt with not performing well. He's dealt with finishing out World Series games. So to be able to put that mindset, and on top of the fact he's a really good pitcher, to put it in our rotation, our pitching staff is only going to be helpful.
Yeah. You know, I think we want every player who comes in here to be themselves. And, you know, learning about Charlie, I think he epitomizes that. He's had a really interesting career path, very secure in who he's become. And just by being himself, I think he's going to have such a great impact on our young pitchers and a great example as they look to settle in.
Kevin, we've seen the flashes of Austin Meadows at the plate, and he has been deemed a five-tool player. How do you see him fitting into this lineup in this roster on the 25?
Well, I think, you know, what Eric said about Yandy, I think this is going to be a little bit of a different spring for Austin in that he does have somewhat of a lane. It's you know, he's probably come in always on the outside looking in. We really like Austin a lot, and we're going to give him that opportunity to go out there in right field, do his thing, and then also at the plate. The little bits that we saw of him last year were really good. It was unfortunate because he was probably the one guy that we wanted to see more of, but we were on a pretty good run. Austin handled it really well, but this spring we're going to make sure that we get a really good look at him, and hopefully he can impact us like we all think.
We've had a mention of a lot of the young players, and a lot of guys came up last year. Besides the stat sheet, what are you looking at this spring? What do you want to see for the growth from these guys that are young and kind of in their first kind of breaking camp and, you know, big seasons?
Well, I mean, probably there's not really too many specifics. You want guys to stay healthy, but as far as the culture that they presented, they created last year, it was pretty special. But we still were short. So whatever we can do to come a little bit closer together, I think that I know the guys that were in the clubhouse at the end of the season last year will embrace a bunch of these new guys that are here, and I think it's going to be another really solid environment. But there's nothing specific. I mean, and I think that's a good thing.
Kevin, you talked a lot last year about the buy-in and specifically to the opener, and there were some comments in the last day or so from Jeff Samardzija from the Giants saying, why weren't Rays pitchers saying no, no, no? Why aren't they having anarchy and objecting to this? I mean, how important was that? And do you think it's even is it different in the second year to get some of these guys to do it again, or you know, just what's your sense of that, and what are your plans?
Well, we're going to have very similar plans as to what we did last year. We certainly value our players quite a bit, and I think that you're looking at what some of these guys did, whether it was the opener or the bulk guy that followed him. They all had pretty special seasons, and credit to Yarbs, to Chirinos, to Stanek, and I mean, we can go down the list. Beeks, Free, all these guys, they bought in, and we're going to need that again. But I also think they really valued and cherished winning games, and that helped us win games.
Yeah, not much to add to that. That is, at the end of the day, this is, we have a young roster. They're willing to do, whatever is, I think, asked of them. And trust, at the end of the day, appreciate the trust that they have in Kevin and the staff to put them in the best position to succeed. And we saw what, is possible when you have that in place. So, those guys do what's asked of them. And the way last year went and the success that a lot of those players had, it helps going into this year, believing that, the intentions behind that are to win games, and they're well-suited, well-guided, and in a good place.
Plan break. Yeah, I think right now with health, 3 starters in no specific order, but Blake, Charlie, Tyler, and then we'll kind of mix and match some versatile bullpen days.
For Kevin, for Eric, you mentioned Tyler. You saw him in 11 starts. I just want to ask you what that glimpse of him last year did to validate what you liked about him, and how excited you are moving forward.
Very excited. He was kind of a wow factor when we acquired him. I know he had one start in Toronto where he got roughed up a little bit, part of his build-up, roughed up in the first inning. Other than that, he threw the ball really, really well for us. And I know that him and Kyle, that relationship continued to evolve over the second half of the year. I mean, you guys all saw it firsthand. There's not many guys that have the physical ability that Tyler shows on every 5th day with the fastball, the curveball. We just got to get him to do everything we can to harness that, trust his stuff, and continue to work to get better, which we know he will.
Kevin, I'm sure it'll play out as you go along during spring. But what's the plan right now at first base now with Jake no longer here?
Yeah, we're gonna get. We got a bunch of guys that are gonna be getting reps over there. Yandy will be over there. G-Man Choi will be over there. Brandon Lau's gonna take some reps over there, and then obviously we have Nate Lowe coming in as a invite. So. We're going to learn a lot about first base, and we all talk about how much we care about our defense and securing the baseball. That's a big spot. So I think the more information that we can get on how these guys complement the rest of our infielders will be really beneficial throughout spring training.
Kevin, how has Brent Honeywell been progressing in his return from injury, and what are your expectations for him this season?
His rehab has been outstanding. Joe Binge and the medical staff, Paul Harker, all of our medical people, we think they're really special. And with Brent, with Jose De Leon, with Anthony Bondo, with Wilmer Font all off season, they're all on the right track. Wilmer Font is fully cleared. With Brent and the other, and Jose and Anthony, it's going to take some time. I think we have to temper their expectations. They're all chomping at the bit. They want to be a part of this, and we know when they get healthy, they're going to help us in some capacity. But right now, it's still early enough that they're just going to be pretty much limited to bullpens, maybe a live BP here or there at the end of spring, but we're not going to see game action out of them, and that's totally by design.
For any of you guys, back in Tampa, Danny Forcor is trying to make a roster spot with the Yankees. Can you just speak to him as a man and seeing him get back to this level? I know you guys are pulling for him.
Yeah, just in the relatively short time that Farkey was a Ray, he's a pretty special guy. And just, take out completely what he did on the field, just getting to know him as a person and getting to pick his brain and learn a little bit about him and his family, just that alone. When something happens like what happened to him, it really clarifies a lot of things that are important, a lot of things that are bigger than baseball. And so to see him make a full recovery and especially get back to doing, what he loves to do at the highest level, that's really exciting, and just happy for him and his family.
For both sides, do you guys think Blake is the kind of guy that success is something where he is placated by, or he is more motivated by to try to do better as he goes into this year, given obviously how last year went and the acknowledgments and awards he received.
Yeah, I mean, we'll know in a year, I guess, but knowing Blake Snell the last couple years, he's been pretty consistent the way he carries himself in the clubhouse. I thought he really handled some difficult situations really well last year, maturely. The All-Star game, all of the talk that he could have come out and done some things that probably weren't in his best interest. He chose to just kind of let other people do his talking. So the maturity that he has shown throughout the course of the year was pretty remarkable. And the way he carries himself, he's a big kid, and he likes to go out and pitch and dominate every fifth day for us. And I don't think that's going to change.
Kevin, from catcher to catcher, how impressed have you been with Zunino? He said right after the holidays he started watching some tape on guys to try to study them and learn, what they like to do on the mound. So how impressed have you been since he's been acquired here?
Well, I've talked to him a handful of times. We've worked out yesterday through BP. He came in on Friday and caught a bunch of guys, and the interaction that he had with the pitchers and then also with Kyle Snyder, Kyle said it was outstanding. And, to have a guy that has his track record of some of the pitchers he's caught, I mean, you could argue that Felix Hernandez has been one of the game's best the last decade. To be able to bring that in, we're going to get him up to speed on some stuff, but we're going to look to him to help us. And he's dealt with some young pitchers and some of the growing pains with that. And I think some of his knowledge is going to only help us get better.
Going back to the opener for a second, I mean, and even to what Samar just said, for another player to speak out like that, you've heard some criticisms along the way. Do you think it's becoming more accepted, or you think it's going to be kind of picked apart even more? And I know people have speculated, what happens when some of these guys get to arbitration, things like that. But you seem pretty resolute in sticking with it. It worked for you.
At the end of the day, our motives are to win games and to put our players in the best position that we believe possible to help us accomplish that, with being mindful of their physical well-being and also their own development. So that will continue to be our guide, and what motivates us through any ideas and any things we do moving forward as we look to improve. But we're going to do what we think is best for us, our organization, and our players. And usually at the end of the day, if that leads to winning games, everybody's happy.
Chaim, I guess probably for you, what are the plans for Wander Franco? I mean, he's gotten such a tremendous amount of publicity this offseason and ranking so high, and I know Kevin probably wants to see him like tomorrow, but what are your plans?
He'll be here tomorrow.
He's never heard of him.
He's actually in your office now, isn't he?
Yeah, he deserves every bit of the publicity that he's gotten. What a debut. Arguably as impressive a pro debut as any player has had in this organization. It's a really a good challenge to have for us to figure out as he goes along, what's the next step for him. I think he's certainly, earned the right to play a longer season, but he's still got a lot ahead of him, and we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves or let him get too far ahead of himself. And he's going to keep playing, keep learning, and we're going to see where that takes us. Certainly he's got special ability and a chance to be a really special player. It's our job to help him reach that ceiling.
Is there a specific area targeted for
I don't think there's anything on the field that he's shown us he can't do. I think like with any young player, especially a shortstop, there's a consistency aspect of this game that comes with time. Hoffey, the late Jim Hoff used to call him, the consistent shortstop, a two-out shortstop. That with 2 outs, tying run on third, ground ball, hit over there, that he's going to convert the out. And Wander certainly hasn't shown himself to be deficient in that regard, but that's something that comes with time as guys grow in their careers. You have to prove you can do that. And in order to do that, you have to have a level of focus on a day-to-day basis that never wavers. And that's one thing, as he gets into longer seasons, as he gets deeper into his career, that he'll have the chance to show.
At the back end of the bullpen, guys, there's no Sergio Romo here this year. What are you looking for out of guys like Jose and Diego to take that next step as to being the guy that can be used almost every day in an 8th and a 9th inning?
I don't know how much Jose Alvarado, how big of a step more he can take. I mean, he was
He can
pretty
play first base
spectacular.
more.
Yeah, he can play first base.
That was his idea.
I thought last year was a really good season for Diego in the fact that he came up, he had early success. And then the league challenged him a little bit, whether it was getting hits off of him or strike throwing, whatever. He was in some jams, and then we saw him come out of that heading into the offseason. So hopefully some of those lumps that he overcame in 18 we avoid. But look, they're special pitchers, and to know that we have those two arms complemented by some other guys, whether it's Ryan Stanek, Chaz Rowe, we think we're confident that they can continue doing what they're doing. We can match up with them however we see fit.
Time for one more.
Not pressure. Back to the bullpen. Is there any, urgency to name a closer, or you just want to go ahead with the best matchup?
There's no urgency. We've had this conversation many times over many years, and I personally like the flexibility of you can win games in the 6th, 7th, and 8th inning. Why wait? And we've got a bunch of guys that we feel will find their way into the 9th inning and have success.
Okay, thanks everybody for joining us today.